Denial is more than just a river in Egypt.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
When you step out of denial, it's going to take a few minutes for your boots to dry, let me tell you. So sometimes it can be quite the process. Thank you for having me here tonight. You know, you mentioned that you have to relive everything when you give your testimony. Well, I gave mine, last time I gave mine, other than a few days ago, was about 2 years ago. And boy, it's amazing how many things change in 2 years. I feel like a whole different world now. I had to go back and remember my story, go through my story, what went wrong, what went right, what did I do, how did I get there, and go through the whole thing again. And yeah, it brings up a whole lot of memories all the way around, it really does. So I'm going to start with Romans 8:28. And we know that God causes everything to work together for the good of those who love God and are called according to his purpose. Even in difficult circumstances, God can orchestrate events that ultimately lead to positive outcomes. And I'm blessed that I can allow my experience, strength, and hope to hopefully help somebody else tonight. So, my story is with addiction, alcohol, PTSD, drugs, all that good stuff. So, brace yourself and hang on. I was born in Antioch, Illinois. My name is Troy Crippen. My clean date is August 28, 2018. Coming up on 6 years.
Hey.
Born in Antioch, Illinois, to a small family. I was the oldest, and we grew up in a Christian family, and right between Chicago and Milwaukee, in a town there. And you know, typical childhood. You know, parents don't get along too much, broke. You know, ain't got no money, didn't have the good clothes and all that good stuff. Not too popular, but you know, the church was a big part of our lives, but probably too much. I got to see a whole lot of different hypocrisy growing up, you know, in the church. Do what I say, don't do what I do, and all that good stuff. And you know, we just went to the one church all the time, and you know, some of the best people I started off doing drugs and alcohol with were from that church. Isn't that nice? But yeah, so you know, it could be a great situation, church in the right avenue. This one just had a bunch of things going on. They changed pastors, and they had all kinds of things going on with it. So. It's not necessarily the church's fault. I'm sure I wasn't on the right page for all that. As I get out of high school, my brother was coming into high school, my parents got divorced. So I knew that was going to happen before it did. I probably knew before anybody but my mom did. So my plan was the same from sophomore year of high school all the way through. You know, it wasn't get a scholarship and go to college. It wasn't, hey, let's see what college I can apply for. It was, let's go in the military because ain't nobody going to be able to afford for me to go to college. You know? Right. If I'm going to go to college, if I'm going to get an education, if I'm going to do anything, I have to figure out a way to do it myself. My dad was in the military, my grandpa was in the military, my uncle was in the military. You know, just had a military family. As a matter of fact, I just saw there was a Crippen in the Revolutionary War, and there's some kind of statue and a painting done of him. And somebody just put it on, my cousin just put it on Facebook. I just saw it yesterday. So, you know, the name Troy means other like war, and well, what do you know? Get in the military, and I end up in Desert Storm. So, Desert Shield, Desert Storm, I was a chemical operations specialist and an airborne paratrooper, and got there, arrived in Kuwait August 2nd, and I got there on the 8th, I believe it was. 127 degrees when I got off the plane.
Wow.
And people dropping like flies, and I was the combat medic trying to find a vein on somebody's arm while they're dehydrated. You know, you don't train that part. You don't think about that. Anyway, I could go on with the war stories forever. Just to say that at my age, you know, I had my 18th birthday in basic training. I only signed up for a 3-year tour. So, I mean, I saw way more than anybody should at 20 years old.
Right.
More, as you can imagine. And that story is for another day. We'll go on from there. But suffice it to say that that was a big part of my life. Still proud of what I did, and I wouldn't change it, and I'm proud of my accomplishments, though. So from there, I decided to go to college at Northern Illinois University. And I applied and got everything all set up to do that while I was in the military. So somehow I managed to get that done. They wanted me anyway. College fund, oh, it's paid for? Yeah, sure, come on. You know, it's one of those things. So I wasn't a horrible student. So I get there, and you know, now all of a sudden I'm a superhero. Fresh out of the Gulf War, and oh my gosh, and hey, you got a Camaro and you're like just about drinking age, and here we go, right? Well, I majored in biochemical engineering, which actually worked out to be alcoholism, and I dropped out after the first year. Really was biochem, but I had an Arabic-speaking math teacher, and I went to the math office for help, and I could talk to Habib, Abdul, Muhammad, and it was just like, I just wasn't gonna take it. Looking back, there's a million ways I could have adapted and overcame. There's always a way to do it. And it probably wasn't even that bad, it was probably just me. So, anyway, so I got out of college and I ended up doing asbestos removal. That's a fun job. Go from the desert to 100 and some odd degree containments while you're trying to take the insulation off the pipes while they're still running the equipment. That's fun.
Wow.
A couple of burns to show it somewhere, but it was good money until you got laid off. But I was just young and trying to figure stuff out. Girl that I had met there, I was a bartender in college too. That didn't help. So certainly didn't help. But I had met a girl at the bar, and she kind of followed me home, and it was convenient and all worked out and all that stuff like that. And I thought it was great because she couldn't get pregnant. So about 35 minutes later, she was pregnant.
Yeah. No way.
Oh yeah. So I had a little girl, and I wasn't going to get married. I wasn't. I went ahead and eventually got married about 6 or 7 months after my daughter was born. So she was at the wedding and stuff. It was nice. A few years later, had a little boy. I eventually got into car sales and moved into a house in Wilmot. But my life had been around bar league softball, bar league darts, trivia, karaoke. Everything is in the bars. It's hard to imagine that in South Carolina where there's a church in every corner. In Wisconsin, there's 2 bars in every corner. I mean, it's amazing how many there are. I mean, you can't. We do land navigation by the bars.
Wow.
To one of my daughter's house, you take a left by Ralph's, go just past Kelly's, turn right next to Foxy's, and go by the biker bar in the back. Park over there. She's right there, and that's true. That's not even like anywhere you go, it's always you go by this bar and that bar. There's that many of them, and everybody knows everybody, and that's where the whole social aspect is, which is pretty easy to figure out when it's 20 below zero up there in Wisconsin. So I guess there's that. But as usual, I take everything to the extreme, and it became more and more and more of a problem, if you will. So it got dysfunctional, it got worse than that. Eventually, I went ahead and I filed for divorce, and I moved to Kenosha, Wisconsin, which is at that point where I was working in a car dealership. I was about 8-10 years in the car sales by then. Pardon me. The divorce was absolutely horrendous. 2 kids, and I could write a book just about that. I mean, she played every trick there was, tried to make it so I couldn't see the kids. It's just a picture a nightmare divorce. That was it. It's not what we're here to talk about today, so go on from there. But it was horrible. In order to make ends meet, I started a website called KenoshaNightlife.com. Oh, great, nightlife. Troy's back in the nightlife. Isn't that great? So I decided to come up with a website that put all the bars and restaurants in one place, all the activities, all the festivals and everything else going on in one place. Simply go on there and find what to do. I mean, that was everybody's social outlet. Well, it took off. It did great. It was doing wonderful, actually. I actually learned how to code. I went to about.com and taught myself. I remember using the FEMA website and taking the code off of it. And just so I wanted blue bars on the left-hand side that I could make go somewhere. That's all it took, but it's just kind of funny how that works. Anyway, so that worked great, except that I was in the bars till 2 o'clock in the morning and worked 12 hours a day in the car business. Yeah, so you can do that for a little while, you can't do that for too long. And it's one or the other, so I eventually quit my job to do the bar thing. Well, that didn't work either. I ended up single in Kenosha, going to the bar scene. I met a girl and she was a bartender. Imagine that. I'm seeing a pattern here. So I'll go back and look.
Right.
And her and I started to click, and things were working out and all that. Next thing you know, I'm her bouncer in the bar, part-time bartender, all that stuff. And her and I hooked up, got together, and she introduced me to the wonderful world of cocaine.
Mm.
I mean, my hair was dark before that.
Gotcha.
No, okay. Anyway, nobody ever gets that joke. But it was not that wonderful, and it was really put me into a lot faster spiral.
Yeah.
Slide down that toilet bowl of life at the time. Yeah, things got from bad to worse. I moved into her trailer, her place over there in Pleasant Prairie, and you're not going to believe this, but 30 some odd years old, and she couldn't get pregnant, never got pregnant, it was all good. 20 minutes later. Yep.
No.
So, believe it or not, I ruined her life. Oh my gosh. But we had a little boy in 2005 named Chase. He's right now he's going to be a sophomore in college.
Wow.
Anyway, so that was certainly changed things quite a bit, but it didn't change them as much as you would hope that they would, because her sister watched him more often than not.
Oh.
And her mother and all that stuff like that. And, we still got to party all the time and do whatever we wanted. That was what it was. So things did not work very well. And the whole relationship centered around drugs and the bar scene. So I worked at all these different places. I was job hopping all over the place, trying to keep things together. And of course, there's legal troubles that popped up and all kinds of other stuff like that. In 2014, I was working at Antioch, the Raymond Kia and Chevy in Antioch, Illinois. A big dealership. And I was working there for a few years, about 4 or 5 year mark. My boss comes up to me after I fell asleep on a car again, standing up.
Oh no.
Mention that. The first time a customer actually said something to me when I was sleeping in the car, I woke up, sold him a car.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and everybody was like,
He's good.
yeah, but it didn't work out so well the second time, of course. Never does. But told me, you drug test now.
Oh boy.
Well, for some reason, I didn't think about going to get another job. I don't know why, but I just thought about what the heck I can do to get out of it. I mean, how do I get out of this mess now?
Right.
So I got a hold of the military, got a hold of the Lovell Federal Healthcare Center in North Chicago, and I enlisted myself into the Addiction Treatment Program, or the ATP program. That was an inpatient 5-week program. You bring a bag, show up, you ain't leaving for 5 weeks.
Wow.
That's what it is, they lock you in. So I went ahead and did that, and they told me I'd have a job when I came back. Okay? That was the other anniversary. I had an anniversary show up on Facebook earlier this week, and it was a picture of the first apartment I had when I moved into Antioch, which I'll get to in a minute. And I had my little devotional sitting there by the window. I thought that was pretty cool. Well, the other thing that came up in my little post from the wonderful Facebook that brings up your memories is that was the first time when I came out of the addiction program that I won Salesman of the Month. Yeah,
Wow.
Pretty neat. Wow. Only salesperson to do it from the Kia side, because it was the small side, and the Chevy side was the big side. It was a pretty big accomplishment. I think I'll celebrate. Yeah,
Oh, no.
Yeah, that's pretty much what happened. Yeah, so it was great for a month.
Hmm.
Yeah, I came out of the addiction program, the treatment program, with the idea that, yep, can't do drugs anymore. Alcohol's legal. What are you talking about? I don't have a problem with alcohol. It's just the drugs. I can do that. So I can still drink. You tell me I can't, but you don't know nothing. As you can imagine, that did not work out too well.
Right.
So, I mean, it took me a while to realize that after a few drinks, well, everything sounded okay. And that's where it started to begin with. It wasn't an alcoholic problem where I'm drinking every morning. It was a problem where I have a few drinks and then my judgment would go and
Yep.
anything was permissible. So anyway, 2014, that started the whole idea of recovery. And they asked me when I was in there if I want to go to the PTSD program, because I definitely have combat PTSD issues. And I'm like, well, how do you know that? They asked me about 5 or 6 questions, and I said, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Let me guess, you're getting in fights all the time, they went down this whole list. But, it was pretty obvious at the time. I said, no, I'm not going to the PTSD program, I'm going back to work. That's just the way it is. So I did that, and that didn't work. I ended up going back and forth in recovery, relapsing, going back to the ATP program, all these other things for quite a while, actually. I got a stack of 90-day chips like I'm starting a poker game.
Well, bless.
But, I realized that I was relapsing between 90 and 120 days. And what they told me in recovery was it takes 90 to 120 days for all your feelings and emotions to come back when you're not drinking and doing drugs.
Mm.
I think somebody was probably right about that, because that's when I kept doing that. I get 90-day chips, I could never get a 6-month.
Oh, man.
Always go back up there. So anyway, so the PTSD issues and self-medicating and all that stuff like that, I just didn't want the feelings and emotions. It was really tough. Well, then one day, got into an altercation and broke my probation. Okay. And the next thing you know, they put me in jail in Kenosha County. Okay. They can't do that to me. Don't they know who I am?
Mm.
They did know who I am, and they can't do that.
They did hear.
Oh, yeah. Took a couple days to kind of get the realization that I'm going to be stuck in there. It really did.
Wow.
Okay. Look back on it and I think how crazy that is. Wearing an orange jumpsuit, sitting in a jail. It wasn't prison, it was jail, but it was still KCDC, the Kenosha County Detention Center. What a culture shock. Oh, wow.
Mm.
Something amazing happened. I'm laying there in the top bunk at night, trying to be quiet, and I met somebody. Again. Okay? And obviously that person is Jesus, thank God. So I finally turned things over. I've been going to meetings off and on, had to do these different things, and didn't really like the meetings, didn't like this, that. But at this point I finally said, okay, my way's not working. My way is not working. I need help. Okay. So I actually turned it all over and asked the Lord to come back into my heart after all that time frame. While I'm sitting there in jail on top bunk crying, really quietly, because there's 35 other people in the cell, and I don't want anybody to know that, so it's, it's not cool. Anyway, 69 days incarcerated, that's it, 69 days. To me, it was like an eternity, though. And I read 52 books, and did the little Bible study thing where you get the certificate and all that stuff, and did meetings as much as I could and church things and everything. Learned a ton. I actually read C.S. Lewis' Mere Christianity, Chuck Colson's Born Again. There's so many classic, awesome books, and I just took it like a sponge. I kept taking notes on this stuff, all that stuff. I found a folder a couple weeks ago with notes like this. It's just crazy. It's like, I must have been really bored. Practically rewriting the books. But I learned a lot, and that's how I take in the information. If I write it down, it kind of keeps my thoughts organized. So, anyway, so I came out of that, and the first thing I did was go back to the ATP program. That was trip number 5.
Wow.
It was the 5th time in the ATP program. This time I went to the PTSD program. Okay.
Praise
Actually,
the
I'm sorry,
Lord.
that was the 4th time I went to the ATP program, and I went to the PTSD program this time. And I got kicked out for fighting.
Oh.
Yeah, you think everything was on the right page, and I thought it was too. So the story kind of continued on from there, but it started a 2-year exploration of faith. Okay, it really did. I had a lot of questions, on Jesus, on God, on Him rising from the dead, on dinosaurs, on the speed of light, on how things were formed. What about evolution? All these millions of questions just all lined up. Okay, so this put me on a 2-year track where I wanted all the information, and I want it now. But I don't want to hear it just from you or you. I want both sides of the story. I want to know every detail, and then I'll make up my mind. Well, I literally have about 400 Christian books. I've got, probably close to 400 DVDs, and I've watched all these different YouTube things, and these different documentaries and stuff like that. It's just amazing all the different things I went through. Some of it good, some of it not worth your time. Just the way it is when you go through that much stuff. But one day, believe it or not, I bumped into somebody. I decided to go to a, Lee Strobel was in town. He's the author of The Case for Christ. Okay. And he was in town giving his spiel on The Case for Miracles, one of his newest book at the time. Okay. That was the other anniversary that came up. Almost today to the day, 6 years ago. No, it wasn't 6 years ago. I think it was 6 years ago. So I was already with some clean time at that point. But I was trying to get my questions finally answered. And I talked to Lee Strobel after it. He just so happened to have nobody behind me waiting to get the book signed, and I guess he just so happened to have nothing else to do but talk to me for like 20 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah, I can't. If I keep believing in coincidences, I'm really going to be in trouble. That's certainly God. And he asked me something. He asked me something very, very, very important. He said, he did the same thing. He said, watch my darn movie, read my book. And he said, I don't want all the information because I was right, my wife was wrong, that was the way it was going to go, and I'm going to prove this thing isn't real. He said, so I went through everything, but I had a, attitude on my end to begin with. And he said, I'm going to leave you with two things. He said, how much proof is enough?
Right.
Okay, how much? You're never going to know everything. Okay. When you think you do, science is going to change some things, there'll be other findings. You're never going to know everything. And the other question is, okay, if that's true, now what? And I was just like, oh. Okay. He said, yeah, that was the questions I had to deal with. He said, those were the questions I had to ask myself, and I had to really ponder it. So don't answer me. Ponder it, think about it, get back to me. It's funny because I think it was 2 years ago I got on Facebook, and Lee was coming out with another book, and I messaged him on Facebook and stuff like that. He remembered who I was, and he actually messaged me back. It was pretty neat. I mean, all the places he goes, I thought that was pretty crazy. But anyway, so that really started a really good momentum on trying to finally flip the script and finally get some ground. But shortly thereafter, my youngest son, his mother, I kept trying to help her. She was in the bar scene still, and I think I could rescue her. So I'd go into Kenosha and I'd sit with her in the bar, come on, let's go to a meeting and this and that and all. You'll never guess, but I ended up relapsing a couple times from that. Can you believe it?
Right.
They keep telling me you go to a barbershop enough times, you're going to get your hair cut. So, very, very true. So, I had one more relapse. But she passed away, believe it or not. She, in and out of the hospital a couple of times, and then one day, I get a phone call saying that she was drunk, coming back from the bar, somebody gave her a ride, dropped her off at the house, but she fell, passed out, blocked her airway, and she's brain dead.
Oh.
You can go to the hospital and say your goodbyes if you want to, but she's hooked up to the machines, and when they unplug them, she's gonna go. I'm like, oh my God.
Oh.
It's pretty crazy, but at least she didn't suffer. I've seen some people really, really suffering in and out of the hospital for months, years with alcohol doing that. But anyway, still had one more relapse in me. Went to my 5th addiction treatment program, and this time I went to the PTSD program and went through the whole thing. It was a 9-week inpatient program right after ATP. So, oh boy, what's that? 1, 2, 3, 4. It's about 5 months.
Wow.
Where I was, basically locked up in the Level Federal Healthcare Center and stuff like that. Got a different apartment, moved into Antioch, Illinois. Had to change my people, places, and things. Like I said, finally get things together. Do my morning devotionals, which frankly have changed a great deal over the years, but for the good. I started by doing my devotionals with a stack of books about this high, and I had to have breakfast and facing the window and all this crazy stuff. How long do you think that can last? It's like, well, you can do that for a little while, but eventually reality's going to come in. There's going to be stuff that gets in the way. And traveling got in the way and all kinds of stuff. But I did manage to put all my devotionals on my phone. Now I can do them wherever I'm at. And it works for me, it really does. So I mean, it's kind of get the right things in place. And I met my second sponsor, and I went to a Celebrate Recovery group in Wisconsin as well, okay, and was going through the steps there. But I had my second sponsor. My first sponsor was perfect for me. Too busy, didn't have any time for me, and I didn't want to do anything anyway. So that was fine. You didn't get anywhere though.
No, you don't.
It didn't help me at all. My second sponsor was a veteran like myself, and he helped me a great deal. Went through the steps very, very, very slowly. I was mad at him because we were going through steps 6 and 7, and he wanted to pull out the book, Drop the Rock. It's about a 90-page book about those 2 steps, about those 6 steps, 6 and 7. For those people who don't know, it's overcoming my shortcomings, leaving them there and turning all that stuff over. And what do you do? How do you do that? How do you change your habits? That kind of stuff. And he said, well, I guess the first thing you need is patience. I wanted to smack him for that one, but he was right. He was right. We went through that eventually and got through all that stuff, but I started going to 90 meetings in 90 days. I did it twice. I got to 6 months.
Wow.
My sponsor says, what would happen if you did it one more time? I said, I don't know. He said, we'll do it. By this time, I actually met some people I liked, was doing activities with the groups, and wasn't that big of a deal. I was going to like 6 different groups throughout the week, and different people and all that. You know, so I did that. And he said, you know, if you did 90-90 one more time, you might make a year. And by this time, it was easier. You know, I had all kinds of different groups I like to go to. And I was running one of the groups, an NA, Narcotics Anonymous group, on a Friday. And so I did, and I hit a year. Never looked back. Never looked back on the addiction thing from there.
Wow.
You know, about a year and a half clean and sober, as life continues to move. Really wasn't looking. I got out of a relationship and I was like, you know, it's just distracting and it's, you know, it's just a lot of work. And I wake up at like 4 o'clock in the morning with this horrible, horrible desire to get a hold of my ex-girlfriend that I dated when I was in the military. Well, this has been 30 years before. Okay, well, I've looked for her on Facebook probably 12 times. It's 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm not getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning to get online and do this. Well, I lay back down. I've only had about 2 hours of sleep, and my eyes are pinned open. I can't close them. I'm like, so then I realized this is God telling me I got to do this. Really. And I live alone in a 3-bedroom apartment, so now I'm having a conversation with God about no, I'm not doing this. Well, by 5 o'clock, I lost the argument. I got up. I started looking on Facebook. Yeah, had an hour-long argument with God in the middle of the night. Thank God I live alone, huh? We've been committed at that point. Believe it or not, I actually found her for the first time. Found her online. I'll never forget it. I remember her dad's name. It came up underneath siblings and all that stuff, and I was like, oh my gosh. I'll never forget. I oh my God, it's you, Send. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I think I'm nuts. Three messages later, I sent her my phone number, and my phone rang. And we pretty much never put the phone back down. It was pretty cool. A couple of trips to South Carolina, and she had one trip up to Wisconsin, where at that point I eventually proposed on Devil's Lake Mountain, on top of it. It was really cool. I mean, I thought I had the total fairy tale life going on. You know, I had asked God I asked God saying that, listen, I'm not marrying your parents. She talks way too much about your parents, so I need to know about that, and we got to be equally yoked. This has to be about you. The next day, God must know I have a short attention span. The next day, she sent me a video from her pastor about marriage, about how you got to start in the bucket, put God in the bucket, you two jump in, your parents don't belong in there. And I'm like, okay, fine. And I went ahead and got married. So I got married, moved out to South Carolina with my little $2,000 boat that I bought, complete piece of junk, but I was starting to get into fishing more and more. It was a good positive thing to do. I was going to veterans groups and veterans trips. I started going to some pretty amazing ones. 2017, I went to what's called Canyon Heroes, and I got to whitewater raft the Grand Canyon for a week.
Wow.
Wow.
What an amazing trip. I just was putting together some pictures into a collage. Actually, yesterday I put it up on the wall. It's kind of going through all this old stuff again. I got my scuba certification when I visited my son, who was in the Navy station in Hawaii.
Wow.
That was pretty awesome. All these different amazing trips. I don't deserve any of it. There's no way I deserve any of that stuff. But you know, when I had recovery and the groups and the meetings, and then I had these trips planned. I had a trip planned for 3 months from now. I'd look forward to it, and I'd be trying to keep myself clean and in shape, so when I go on this trip. Well, then I get back from it, I'm talking about it for 3 months. So, and planning the next one. So these trips were really therapeutic. It really helped me stay on page. So, I mean, that was really, really good. 2015 was the first year that I went to fishing for freedom in Quincy, Illinois. I was still living in Illinois then. And I was so broke I had to take a train into Chicago and then over to Quincy. And the guy that volunteered picked me up at the train station and stuff. And they give you everything for free, all the fishing stuff. I was like a dork, get back in the train with a couple fishing poles and stuff. It was kind of funny. But believe it or not, it was the first fishing tournament I ever went to, ever. And we won the whole thing. I can't say it was because of my fishing prowess. It was catfish. He baited everything on his boat, put the lines out, and said, okay, don't touch it. No, not yet. Okay, grab it, reel it in. And then he did it. So I didn't really do anything, but won the tournament. It was a lot of fun. Leaving there 2 trophies and stuff, and had a great time. It was amazing. And so I went 4 years in a row. The next year I actually drove though.
Wow.
Right. 2 more years. But like I said, 2020 was when I ended up getting with my wife, getting married, all that stuff like that, and moving to South Carolina for the first time. We moved out to New York. 2021, I had some severe stomach pains that got worse and got worse and got worse, and I ended up in the hospital. And they misdiagnosed me and sent me home, and then I went somewhere else, and they finally said, look, dude, you got a blockage. We have to do surgery now. So they cut me open in 2021 and gave me an ostomy. Removed part of my colon. So I had cut all the way up, okay, and had a poop bag taped to my stomach. Oh, that was great. That was just wonderful. A lot of fun. So I had depression, the whole thing. I was really out of it. Thank God my wife was there to help, get me through all this stuff. Then eventually, 8 months later, I sold my boat. And like 7 months later, I had the takedown surgery. So thank God they put me back together so I could use a real toilet again. Thank God. I've never been so happy to see a toilet in my life. But it was very traumatic for me going through all that.
Yeah.
It really was. Thank God she was there to help me go through it. Once again, I asked my wife. I said, "Listen, my credit's a lot better than it was. Let's go buy a house. Let's get out of your parents' trailer over here. Let's go do the house thing. I sold my boat. I got some down payment. Not that I need it because I'm VA, but let's do this." Nope, I'm living here next to my mom and dad. That's where I'm staying. All right, then I'm buying another boat. Okay. So I went over to Gunnersville and I picked up this used Ranger boat. It was a really good move. It was a really good boat. Really nice. But not too long after that, when I was still recovering, a couple months after that, I ended up with a couple of hernias. Had to get another surgery. Cut me open for the third time. And in this big old hernia mesh. So 2021 was pretty much just shot for me. I mean, it was a rough year. 3 huge surgeries and all that stuff like that. And frankly, when thinking back on it, if I wasn't out of my addiction, then I would not be here.
Right.
There is no possible way
Wow.
that I would have survived that in my addiction. So I guess God had some plans for me going forward. So anyway, September 2023, we're getting closer. We're good on time. We got back from Vegas and my wife told me she wants a divorce.
Ah,
And I'm like, well, wait a minute, this is a fairy tale thing, you can't do this. And you can't just tell me to go, we're married. I mean, the whole God thing, remember, hello, we go to church, all this stuff. I mean, let's go to counseling, let's get this worked out, tell me what I gotta do. Nope, you can go to counseling, I'm not going. Well, what? So you talked about denial. That's how I can say that denial is not just a river in Egypt. I was in denial from September all the way up until after Christmas that this is really going to happen. I'm really getting divorced. I thought for sure I could put this together, buy her something, do something, kiss up to her. And we're married. Come on. No, I can't. That's the way it is. So she told me to hit the road in January. Told me to get out of her house. I said no. No, I'm not getting out of your house. I said, I ain't never hit you. I never did any drugs, alcohol, nothing like that. I don't deserve to be treated that way. You want me to go? Fine. I'm gonna go buy a house and I'll leave. Okay? I ain't gonna break nothing. I'll clean up behind myself and all that stuff. You ain't gonna kick me out. I don't deserve that. Quit treating me like I'm some kind of a person who beats somebody up and does all this stuff. And lo and behold, that actually worked, believe it or not, which is kind of mind-boggling looking back. But she had no reason to fear me. I mean, come on, I didn't do anything bad. I loved her. So anyway, believe it or not, after the usual, I want this house, not getting this house doesn't work, that one's got a problem, somebody else bought it, and all that crazy house stuff I haven't dealt with. I bought a house in Lancaster. And before that, part of my story I didn't mention is during part of that time in between, my mom was not being taken care of in her assisted living facility, okay, up in Kenosha, Wisconsin. So I moved her out here. I moved her to an assisted living facility in Fort Lawn.
oh,
So when I bought this house, it was 5.5 miles away from her, okay? And it was great. I mean, I took her out to lunch once a week, and we went to church, almost every week, it was every other week. And I visited her probably 3 times a week on an average. When she went there, she had a catheter, oxygen, a walker. You're not even supposed to be in an assisted living facility with a catheter, but thank goodness the lady who ran it was a nurse and she took that out right away. But I'll be there 2 or 3 months later, she's running around like she's great. Wow. No walker, no oxygen, no nothing. She was doing wonderful. Absolutely wonderful.
Wow.
Well, hang on to that thought. So I closed on my house, and 2 weeks later, she passes away. 2 weeks later. So I mean, here I am thinking this is going to be great, right there, the whole thing. And 2 weeks later, she's in the hospital. She's going to come home the next day. Oh, I'm fine, no problem. The hospital says, oh, she's going to just keep her one more night. She'll go home tomorrow. Well, she coded that night, never came back. So that was that. Well, that was obviously one more thing for me to go to. Now I got to do to it with a house still torn apart and still trying to get everything situated and all that stuff like that. But I wouldn't trade the time I was able to spend with her. There was 9 months there where I really got to spend some good quality time with her. And thinking back on it, she came back to God too.
Oh, wow.
You know, there was a pastor who came by and stuff. She kept reading her Bible and all this stuff. And it was a pretty special time, really, when I think about it. Anyway, as far as the divorce goes, it was final relatively recently. But I mean, yeah, we got to be separated for a year before you can do the divorce and all that stuff like that. But you know, I can to this day I can look at myself in the mirror and know I did everything I could to keep the marriage together. You know, and everything on my end. Stayed sober, stayed with the program. You know, when I was sick, I couldn't go to meetings all the time. That made sense. I was home. But you know, when I was going through the divorce, I was, holy cow, at a meeting every day. Talking to my pastor with pastoral counseling, talking to my VA guy, talking to my VA friends from the PTSD program from years before. Everything. And going on veterans trips still were pretty amazing. So, believe it or not, I got to go on a scuba diving trip in the Bahamas for 10 days.
Wow.
With a veterans group that was just amazing. Unbelievable. Sharks on every dive but one. It was just unreal. They had big shark feed too and all kinds of stuff. The trip was just something you see in the movies that you don't get the chance to do. And then 2 years ago, I got a chance to go to Israel. Matter of fact, I came back from Israel, and 45 days after I got back was that October 7th, that horrible October 7th day. So I was there right before that. That trip, we got to hang out with IDF soldiers and disabled IDF, and they showed us behind the scenes and all this other crazy stuff. It was what an amazing trip. You know, again, I don't deserve any of this stuff, but it was pretty cool to be able to do it. It really was. So anyway, so in 2025, this year, actually, let's see here. There we go. This year in 2025, I got to go to the Texas fishing tournament with Fishing for Freedom. The Texas fishing tournament with Army bass anglers. It's a group I got in touch with and started to do tournaments with and fish with. And Army bass anglers is not one that I'm taking anything from. Army bass anglers, I'm helping support 4 veterans charities: Heroes on the Water, Warrior Canine, Mighty Oaks, and Warrior Canine. So it's really cool that that this group does that, and they go to the Bassmaster Classic, they go to all these things, they have these awesome tournaments. So I went up to Texas and they let me get my boat wrapped. So I got my boat wrapped with the Army bass anglers, all down the side, the red, white, and blue. It was
pretty.
amazing. It's awesome. I'm just so proud of that I was able to do that. And the year before that, not my divorce year, but 2023, I got to go back to Fishing for Freedom in Quincy, Illinois. Drove 1,000 miles to get up there in my own boat. And I took a veteran fishing.
Wow.
So I got to go back up there and give back. It was amazing. It was awesome. I was with Army bass anglers then, but didn't have the boat wrapped. But I wore my jersey, and they interviewed me. Because I was the guy who went 4 times, and then I was the guy who brought my boat back and drove 1,000 miles to get there. And actually, I'm still on their website at fishingforfreedom.com for Quincy. And you open up the Facebook page, and it's like a 2-minute video, and I'm in it.
Oh.
It's still there 2 years later. But I got to go again this year. That was awesome. And I got to go, with my boat wrapped with Army bass anglers. So all the videos and pictures from the parades and everything else that they do for the whole weekend things, got my boat all over it and stuff's pretty neat because they all loved it. And I took an 86-year-old Vietnam vet out fishing. It took 3 people to help him in the boat, 3 people to help him out of the boat.
Oh.
Tested my patience big time, let me tell you. Suddenly the tournament and how I did in the tournament didn't mean anything. Just trying to get him to catch some fish and have some fun. So I had to change my whole thing around, but it worked out really neat. But I look back now and I think about what I did to get where I'm at and all that. Every single thing is God. Period.
Right.
Every single thing is God. I tried recovery I'm coming up on 7 years out of 11, so 4 years. In and out of the rooms, couldn't get any traction, couldn't keep anything together. So I finally gave up and turned it over. But turning it over isn't a light switch. It's not snapping your fingers and go, okay, well, God's gonna fix it, I'm good now.
Right.
There's still work to do.
Right.
And it took me a little bit to get the traction to do it. I have to be humble enough to listen to people. I have to be humble enough to listen to the winners in the groups, how'd they do it? Talk to pastors, still get pastoral counseling, still read my Bible, still do my morning devotionals. You know, every time you get rid of a bad habit, you gotta put a good one in there.
Amen.
And then it takes you so long to build up that good one. It takes you about 13 seconds, quicker than it took for me to get those girls pregnant, to lose a good habit.
Right.
Yes, that's supposed to be funny. Anyway, but yeah, you know, today I sit up here, I've got 4 grandkids, you know, and you know, my 3 kids are doing real well. My son's out of the Navy, put 9 years in, now he's got a really good job with his electrical engineering degree. Daughter's married with 2 little boys, lives in Trevor. Son's a sophomore in college up in Carthage. And I guess I'm still supposed to be in South Carolina. Well, my mom would have passed away before I closed on that house out here. So, evidently God's not done with me yet, and I've got a lot more to do. I got a girlfriend now who actually can put up with me. She's a psychologist and an ex-Marine. Of course, he'll tell me there's no such thing as an ex-Marine. So, yeah, she'll correct me on that every time I say it too. So at least she can put up with me, which is good. Sometimes she even outfishes me. So she
Wow.
that, too.
Yeah.
Don't tell her I said that. Anyway, but you know, so now I can give my story, help some other people, sponsor some people, and I really enjoy being able to take people from church, people from the groups, veteran friends. You know, I really enjoy getting a chance to take them out fishing on my boat. You know, now I get to take somebody out, and I don't expect anything in return. You know, so that really that works out pretty neat. So, thank you for letting me give my story tonight. I appreciate that. I'll leave you with this. How much proof is enough? God's real. I see the miracles all the time. How much proof is enough? Well, what about the speed of light, Troy? Let me look at my crystal ball. Which science fact do you want now? Because they're going to change it in 10 minutes. I believe the Bible, and I believe that God is real. So
Amen.
How much proof is enough? Well, if that's true, now what? We don't know what happens with that. You're going here, you're going here. You know, if there's good, there's bad, and hey, I don't have to tell you the whole story. We're in church, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You know, so you know, at some point, we all have to say, hey, what side of this thing are we on? You know, and I hope this helps you see that there are miracles in the program, and things
Yes.
definitely do still work. Thank you.
Yes.
Amen.